over and over again, there are these they're almost like glitches in the human brain of how we accidentally glom a bunch of things together, and then it becomes hard. So it's not that the decision is hard, it's just that we haven't been able to pick apart the pieces in a way that we can see which parts, like what's your first next step.
Okay, so
And yeah,
that's
go ahead.
really fascinating. Can you give me an example of that? Like what?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think here's where I'll have to like control myself. So, because I could give you 1,000 examples. So some of them are really, really simple. Some of them are just time based. So you're trying to make one decision, and here's what I love about this work is it's multiple things have to be true at the same time. Like that's the way the
Hmm.
world works. Entrepreneurs and leaders have to look out and scan the far distance and predict obstacles and worry about what, unintended consequences. You would be a terrible leader if you didn't do that. And yet, sometimes that the volume on that knob is turned up too high and it needs to be turned down so you can have clarity about what your first next step is. And a lot of what I do relies on this metaphor that I have vetted with an actual NASA person. This is true that like when they're sending anything to space, so the space shuttle somewhere, it is never actually on course, ever, 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 because the only way they can get anything anywhere is to course correct it. They it to the left and then immediately it's off course. And it's just a matter of how far do we let it go that way before we it back to the right. And that's the only way they can get it anywhere. And I think whether we like it or not, that's actually how life and business work. And we have no more control than that. You make a decision and then it's just how long until you have to like it back the other way. So with one separation is time, that there's a trap of like looking way out into the future, 8 steps down the chess game, which if
Hmm.
you're a chess player, good chess players see 8 steps down the chess game. But in life and business, it's more true that you just need to move. Sometimes any decision is better than none. If you stay stuck, that's where the real risk is just staying in indecision or quagmire for way too long. So if you're looking at all the things and you can't decide, you have to back it up to what's right in front of me right now. Sometimes you're trying to play the game 7 steps out. And the interesting thing about that is you're including decisions that will go away with each of your first decisions. So I'll give a better example.
Yeah.
I was or specific examples, it's not so theoretical. I was working with a client a few weeks ago who is navigating a potential acquisition. A week away, she was having a conversation that if that acquisition was going forward, 9 out of 10 of the other things weighing on her right now would go away because they're not things. If you're going to sell your house, you don't worry about renovating the kitchen next week if a buyer is going to put a contract on next week. You just don't do those things.
Right.
And it was only a week away before she would have some idea of whether or not that was going to happen or not. So the value of also trying to figure out all these other things was not the best use of the very limited brain space she had, because, oh, by the way, she was also sick and kind of run down
Mm,
and really
mm.
needed to kick back and for just a little bit to like renew. But she was like, but I can't because I have all these things. I was like, well, actually, that's a potential lot of wasted effort. Now, if she wasn't going to find out about the acquisition for 6 months, then that's not a luxury. But so checking about, like, am I trying to make all the decisions at once? And what can I just do in this next bit so that I'm not pouring energy into things? So that's one. Being really careful not to conflate things. I think this one's really hard to do yourself.
Mm.
But sometimes if, I'll give more like a personal example on this one, just so it's not so specific, but it's really easy to conflate like wanting to help wanting to set a boundary with someone with being a jerk. And yes, there's a Venn diagram there. Those can be the same, but they're not inherently the same thing. And so a lot of what I do is reminds me of, if you've ever done like IT troubleshooting, like if something's on your computer is not working, you have to separate the variables, right? Like you have to, if my computer can't, attach to the network, back in the old days, first thing you do is swap out the cable to see, okay, so it's not the cable. So now other computers have access to the network. So it's not that we don't have access to the network in general. And you have to find ways to, okay, so it's not that, maybe it's actually this router. So you stick in another router and you're like, oh, nope, okay, it's not the router. That process of isolating the variables is one of the best ways to get down to make decisions a little bit easier.